Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to this webinar. My name's Graham Hutchins from Sims International, and today we're going to be talking about the memory market and what's been happening. Joining me from sunny California, well, I hope it's sunny over there, is Nate Steffens. Welcome to you, Nate. So I'm just going to ask Nate to talk a little bit about Kingston Technology and his role within Kingston. Nate, over to you, sir.
Hi, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Graham, so much for having me on. It is truly an honor to be here. I've worked with Sims for many, many years, so to have you invite us is a tremendous pleasure. I work for Kingston Digital, which is a subsidiary of Kingston Technology Corporation. Kingston Technology, for those that don't know, is about a $14 billion company. We are the largest third-party manufacturer of memory. And when I say third-party, I mean we are not a semiconductor. So we are known as an aggregator. So we buy from 6 of the 7 major semiconductors, and we also purchase from 6 of the controller companies and put the products together and send products out to companies like Sims and other companies all throughout the world. My particular role is as Vice President of NAND Operations is essentially to work with the semiconductors, to work with the controller companies, to make sure that we have access to supply and to produce products that meet our market needs and the demand of the market.
Great. Well, thanks for that excellent introduction, Nate. So yeah, as I said, we're going to be talking about the market and really what has been happening over Q1 of 2021 in the NAND flash market.
It has been a very incredible last couple of quarters. Q1 and Q4, for that matter, have been very challenging for the market. And the main issue hasn't been the semiconductors. It has been the foundries, the integrated circuit foundries, mainly companies like TSMC, UMC, and to a small extent, SMIC. So those products that have come out of those companies are things like controllers, power ICs, display ICs, those type of products. So those products are under tremendous shortage right now. Especially the older lithographies, the older geometries are very, very short. And the reason for that shortage is there's just tremendous demand, not only from the auto industry, but also from 5G, wearables, IoT, PC, data centers. Everybody is trying to get these products, and there's so few companies that produce it. It has created a massive shortage in the industry. So as a result, it's difficult to get these products to manufacture SSDs and USB drives and flash cards and embedded products. And that has in turn led to governments getting involved and trying to secure products for the automotive industry. It's really gone into just a crazy time that we haven't seen before, because the challenges we see are mainly with the semiconductors. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but the semiconductors and getting NAND is usually the challenge. But now it's these ICs that are a challenge, and so as a result, prices are going up and product is becoming more scarce.
So do we know what's caused the component shortages for this? You talk about there's been just a huge demand. Would these companies not have done any kind of forecasting to at least foresee some of it, or has it just come so much in such a short space of time they were perhaps underprepared?
So there's a few things that come into play. One is the restrictions of the Trump administration on the Chinese technology, Chinese semiconductors. So SMIC, which is also a player in the IC foundry, it's restrictive of what companies can work with them. So that's a big factor in it. Another factor is, like you said, just too much demand that came all at once. They are trying to adopt 5G, and then you can't ship automobiles now without electronics in it. So as a result, there's a huge demand, obviously for not only autonomous vehicles, but also electric vehicles and that type of thing. So It's a lot of demand, and then to build new foundries, to build factories, costs billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars. So to do that quickly in a short time frame is very challenging. So we see this shortage actually lasting not only through all of 2021, but into 2022. These foundries are now at this time putting plans in place to build additional capacity, which likely won't come on till late 23 or 24.
That's an interesting point. If I can pick up on the capacity, Nate, we hear about these the fab plants, the big six, if you were, power outages, rumours of fires happening that has a detrimental effect on supply. One I think there was a recent case in Texas where a plant went down for whatever reason, and it had such a massive impact on the supply of flash that we've seen a spike in delays. Can you tell us anything about that at all?
Certainly. So that's always the issue with these factories, is they consume so much power. And once you start a wafer, and it's actually a 3-month process for wafer starts, anytime you disrupt that, or there's a power outage, that lot then becomes dead in a lot of scenarios. So it's a big challenge. The instance that you're referring to in Texas had to deal with Samsung, and they manufacture controllers there. And because of the flooding that was happening in Texas, the power company had to shut the power down. Otherwise, there'd be catastrophic failures. And as a result, that affected their technology output. But these things happen regularly. In Japan, you have earthquakes. Well, Kioxia and WD have the majority of, if not all of their manufacturing done in Japan. So when there's an earthquake, there's always concern that you're going to have power outage. And yes, they do have backup power, but there's still massive disruptions, machine shaking, that type of thing that can happen. On Tuesday, there was a fire at a TSMC fab. Luckily, the part that was affected was mainly for research and development, so it's not going to affect supply very much. But those little power outages, fires, natural acts can really affect the market. And so you'll see spikes in the market because companies are forecasting that supply will be tight over the next quarter.
So as a third-party manufacturer, how would you typically manage that? You hear of an outage at a plant that supplies you. How would you manage that as Kingston?
So we hedge. So luckily Kingston is large enough, and we built this up over 35 years to become the largest, so that we have tremendous economies of scale. So as I said in the beginning, there are 7 major semiconductors in the world, and we work with 6 of the 7. So we're able to hedge our bets. So if there's a power outage of Kioxia, we'll try to possibly work closer with Micron or Intel or Hynix or somebody else, so that we can hedge that and make sure that our supply is continuous. Same with controllers. We work with 6 different controller companies, and so they all have their strengths and weaknesses. For example, some work with UMC and some work with TSMC. So with this controller shortage, you might have more output coming from UMC than TSMC. So we're able to kind of hedge that, if you will. And that allows us to consistently service and deliver the products to our customers.
Oh, that's great. That's a brilliant explanation, Nate. Thank you. So going down the next step of the supply chain, how does Kingston, how do you help your customers manage these shortages in the market?
So these shortages create different scenarios, right? So we see in a lot of times that people try to play the market. I mean, DRAM and NAND is a commodity, if you will, and commodities can be traded, and commodities, the price easily go up and down as a matter of course. And so there's different cycles. And so we know that some of our customers try to play the market, so they expect a shortage to come, and they'll try to purchase more, or they think pricing is too high and they think that an oversupply is going to come, so they'll purchase less and wait for that timing. Our advice is always, please don't try to play the market. We've been doing it for 35 years. In our from our perspective, we're the experts in it, and we're able to do that. So what I recommend for all our customers is to make sure that you have an accurate and real forecast of what your customer needs, what product it's going into, and in today's environment, try to forecast that out as long as you can. For example, for controller companies, we are being asked to put forecasts in through all of 2022.
Wow.
That's more than 18 months. And that's almost, in this industry, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen 18 months from now, and what products you're going to need 18 months from now. So to the extent that you can get accurate forecasts and know what your customers need and what products are going into, and then work with your partner, people like Sims and those types of companies, to get that information, and then we can work with them and make sure that that forecast is in our plan of record, and we can supply the product that you need.
Yeah. So forecast.
Forecast. And be careful. Be very careful if you are stuffing the channel, if you will, if you're holding on inventory, because you can get burned. We've gotten burned several times, Kingston. So you need to be very careful if you're going to play that game.
Mm. There's an interesting article coming out from the Far East. The CEO of Hynix mentioned in the next 10 years we're going to see 600 layer NAND, which is phenomenal. What are your thoughts on that? How long do you think that, if that does happen within, say, 5 years, how long will that take to filter down into Kingston products, for example?
So we try to stay cutting edge as possible. However, we qualify the products quite a bit. So there are many companies, many competitors of ours that have in the past not qualified products. So if Hynix comes out with a 600 layer part, they're going to grab it, put it in SSD and ship it. Kingston doesn't work that way. So typically if we have a new product, it's going to take us about 6 months to qual and to get it out, make sure it's ready for our customers. And then you in turn need to qualify it with your customers. So it takes a little time to trickle down into the market. The one challenge that we do see with companies like Hynix and all the semiconductors, frankly, being so aggressive in their technology nodes is that they are trying to minimize their costs. And so as they continue to move from 140 layer to 190 layer to 600 layer, they that in turn should theoretically reduce their manufacturing costs. However, there are capital expenditures that are a part of that, which makes it challenging for them to continuously do so. But as they become more aggressive in doing that, we see these nodes, these technology nodes, the life cycle getting smaller and smaller. So that's tough for companies like Kingston. That's tough for our customers because like I said, once we qualify a product, and that's 6 months after it's launched from the semiconductor, they're already talking about the next generation. And so we then have to work with our customers to move on to the next generation. So when you have a life cycle of a product that's 18 months or less, that becomes a big challenge for customers, especially in the auto industry. The auto industry, they need products to last years, 5 years, 10 years is not unheard of.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. Now we're hopefully, touch wood, coming out of a global pandemic. What's the impact been like for Kingston on the supply and the global logistics of dealing with COVID?
It was interesting. So last April was our worst month that we've had in years. I mean, the U.S. shut down in March. Europe was shutting down. Latin America was starting to shut down. So in April of last year, so a year ago, we did 10% of our normal sales because nobody knew what was going to happen and what was going to go on. And so we have slowly recovered, and that's good. But there are lingering effects. There are lingering component and materials. We do have shortages now from printed circuit boards, other smaller capacitors, resistors, that type of thing, because companies shut down, if you will. So they weren't manufacturing as much. You didn't have the labor in place. And then they slowly came back up. And so we're still seeing the effects of those component shortages. We are seeing logistics coming back. Logistics meaning the number of airplanes that go in and out of China, in and out of Taiwan. So we're seeing that improving, but that was a big issue. For a while there was one flight a day going from Taiwan to UK. And so that was a big concern because we were used to having several flights a day, or at least that route, if you will. So that's been improving, and things are getting better. But the demand is still very strong. You still have people working from home. Some people feel they'll never go back to the office. So you need PCs, laptops, iPads, everything that supports a work from home or a distance learning environment.
So given there's ultimately going to be what we're seeing a shift in working patterns, and offices closing down potentially or downsizing and more people working from home, as you say, this is going to put a much tighter demand for things like upgrading laptops and PCs for DRAM and SSDs, for example. So what sort of steps are Kingston taking to kind of help ramp up production, if you will, to satisfy demand?
So we have long-term agreements in place with our semiconductor partners, which is helpful. So that ensures a supply, and that puts us at the front of the line of getting supply. And we're able to put those long-term agreements in place because we've created these economies of scale, and we have the size that we're able to leverage, if you will. Now, because of the controller shortage, we're doing the same thing on controllers. Now we're putting these long-term agreements in place and guaranteeing supply on controllers. So that'll help. That'll help to make sure that we get product. It's interesting, though, the semiconductors. Just to go back to what the current market situation is, the semiconductors see a really robust book of business. The demand is very strong in the semiconductors. So NAND right now is tight. So not only are controllers tight, but NAND is tight as well. We, Kingston, and please don't go out and buy on the market on this, but our take is that we think because of the controller shortage, you're going to see an oversupply in the NAND market, because you're not going to be able to essentially sell as many SSDs to customers because they don't have the ICs for full systems, they don't have controllers, that type of thing. So we think the current shortage in NAND will flip maybe towards the end of this quarter, maybe even Q3, as the controller shortage and the IC shortage is really realized in the market. So we think NAND will become a little bit oversupply. And that in turn will drive some of the NAND pricing down. But however, we think the pricing for products will continue to grow because, again, you do have this IC shortage. So we think pricing will go up. But the challenge that we have is that if you have oversupply in NAND, but you have too few controllers, then the simple solution is put more NAND in each SSD, right? And that's how you consume it. But unfortunately, we haven't seen the customers willing to take double the density. So customers that used to buy a 240 gig drive aren't so eager to buy a 480 gig drive. And as such, we don't see the prices increasing on the higher densities as much as you'll see on the lower densities.
That's an interesting point you picked up there. They're happy to take 240 gig, but not 480. The price difference between 240 and 480 isn't that great. So surely the trade-off between more capacity for a little bit more makes sense.
You would think it would, but it depends on what that delta is going to be, right? In some regions of the world, even a 50-cent delta is a deal breaker. Some of the developing countries. But you're exactly right, Graham. 480 gig drive is not double the price of a 240. So what is that gap, or what is that price difference that a customer then will jump to the next density? And that's what we play with and we work with on a daily basis.
Cool. Thanks, Nate. As we're on the topic of product, are you seeing any particular NAND product sets that are impacted by supply more than others? So are SSDs impacted more than flash drives, for example?
So it depends. It depends on the product. For the controllers, it's the older technology that is more constrained. So USBs, cards are still in a 40 nanometer process. SATA SSDs are still on 40 nanometer. Our SATA controllers, are still on 40 nanometer. PCIe is kind of progressed to the 28 nanometers. So getting SATA drives will be more challenging. PCIe, while a little bit constrained, won't be as constrained. Embedded products are very challenging right now because that's on an older node. So yeah, that's what we're seeing at this point, that those products are more challenged.
Yeah, well,
and that's mainly because the controller companies can sell it for a higher price, right? PCIe, the latest technology, and so they're going to have the foundries focus on that, and they're also on newer technology.
That again, another brilliant explanation, Nate. Thank you. We're going to take some questions now. We have a question from Ralph Coulter. Thank you very much, Ralph. Apologies if I pronounce your name incorrectly. Have there been any supply challenges regarding the unfortunate incident in the Suez Canal?
Oh, we'll see. We'll see what happens out of Suez. Not yet. We haven't seen anything. But it's interesting. One of the things that came up to my attention a couple weeks ago is that not only do we have shortages on controllers and shortages on PCB and capacitors, resistors, but we're also starting to see a shortage on boxes, just regular cardboard boxes. And part of that's due to COVID. Part of that's due to more people getting their shipments delivered home. They're not shopping. So I don't know if you've seen, but your Amazon package now a lot of times comes in a bag, at least in the U.S., rather than a box, because there's actually a shortage on cardboard. So that's one thing that's come out of COVID and that's happening now that is a concern. It remains to be seen what the Suez Canal issue has. The majority of the products that we get on the flash side are air transported. So they're not done by sea, because in a commodity environment, if you ship something by sea, you'll lose it. You'll lose the price because the price will change within 2 weeks. That's way too long. And the price is so dynamic, we need to have products within a couple of days.
So I think the takeaway from your packaging question there, Nate, is if there are any budding packaging entrepreneurs out there that have an alternative to cardboard, now's the time to start investing in developing something.
The next commodity, cardboard. Yes.
I'm there. Well, we've got roughly 2 minutes before we have to wrap up, and I just want to recap on some of the things you've talked about today and some of the takeaways, if you will. I think the first one you've made crystal clear is to forecast at least from what we're seeing at Sims. We're saying to people 3 to 12 months is a typical window, but obviously for you it's a lot further out, and communicate with your customers and your partners on what your requirements are. Secondly, on that is the communication, and possibly consider dual source products. I think that's a given for nowadays, but a lot of people unfortunately don't take that option. Understanding the market is critical. You've given us an absolutely fantastic overview of what's been happening. Something that we can spend hours trawling around the internet trying to look for answers, but not getting anything definitive. So coming direct from yourself, Nate, who speaks to the big six, as we call them, on a daily basis, getting the inside line has been fantastic. One thing that Sims does have that any of our viewers today might find helpful is something called Sims Foresight, and it's a market update document that's available on our booth, which you're free to download, and it gives you an overview of the memory market. And if you sign up via our website, we are doing monthly updates on the memory and NAND market. So if you have an interest in this, you are affected, please do sign up and talk to us. We're here to help. Well, ladies and gents, that just leaves me to say thank you very much to Nate joining us from California. Nate, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man.
Thank you, Graham. It's been a pleasure.
And we'll speak to you soon. Thanks so much.